Hi there, it is Jo from Minerva, and today I'm here to do a sew along of something a little bit different. We're going to make a parka coat from Style Arc. It's an unlined coat and it's more of a kind of coatigan, a sort of cosy wrap coat that you would throw on over the top of something else. It's not lined, and today I've chosen to make it in a slightly different fabric so that you can see some different skills. I'm going to use a boiled wool. The coat pattern features really large pockets, patch pockets on the front, and it's got a different sort of collar to what you normally might see. So this one hugs the back of your neck and then it lies flat at the front. So it doesn't actually stand up as a collar, it doesn't roll as a collar. It's like a sort of flat neck panel. It's got a drop sleeve, so you don't have to set in any sleeves either, and you will be turning up the hem and sewing that by hand because there's not a lining to enclose all of the seams. This pattern comes in different size brackets, so make sure you get the pattern that includes your size. If you've not seen boiled wool before, here's a little square of it. So it's 100% wool, this version that I'm going to use today. It's got a sort of felted, nubby texture. It's got a little bit of stretch in one grain, but not because it's stretchy, just because of the way all the fibres are matted together. It's really warm. This one comes in lots and lots of different colours. There are also other boiled wools on our website, so you can check those out. Some come in, some go out. This is one of the core range ones, which is why I've chosen it to use today. And there's also one with a viscose content in, and that gives a slightly different drape. So this one is quite structured, but it is malleable. And boiled wool sort of moulds to your body as you wear it. So say if you had a coat and you were bending your arms in it, then you would start to get like a little shape in the arm or across your shoulders where it sort of moulds to your body. With this fabric in mind, I'm going to change up some of the instructions from the pattern. So I've read the pattern all the way through, and in my mind I'm thinking, how many layers of this am I going to have in places, because that might change my construction technique. So I'm going to show you how I adapt this pattern to use a different fabric, a really thick fabric. You might be making this pattern in a Ponte Roma, any kind of thick ribbed jersey. You can also use a woven fabric, so you might use a sort of boucle. If you use a boucle, you'll get this similar sort of nubby texture. It's quite an oversized jacket coatigan, so you can use a woven or a stretch fabric, but any kind of thick textured knits or textured woven fabrics would make a great version of this coat. Because I don't use this fabric very often, I've just done a few little tests of it. So I've put a couple of layers together to see how thick it is. I want to see how my machine handles it. I'm just using my most basic sewing machine today because I want to show you that even with different fabrics, you don't need a fancy machine. I've put a ballpoint needle in there because that was the one that worked the best in the fabric. Because of the soft tip of the fabric, it didn't pull up the fibres, so that worked really well. I've got a normal all-purpose thread, and I have put my walking foot on my machine because of the little bit of stretch in the fabric, I was getting a little bit of movement between the top and the bottom. You can eliminate this by pinning really well your seams. I like to use less pins and my walking foot. To share my video challenges today, they're quite large pieces, so I'm trying to get a shot where you can see as much of the jacket as you can. I haven't shown cutting it out. It's all cut on grain. There's nothing complicated there. There was no pieces needing to be cut in a different way. I did cut it with a rotary cutter because with 2 layers of the boiled wool together, I would have really forced the blades open on my scissors. So the thickness would have made the screw sort of loosen up and I would have got rattly scissors. So I used a rotary cutter for that part, but any scissors are great. Just have a little test on the side, check that it's going to go through. And you don't need to pre-wash this fabric because it's already pre-washed by making this effect of boiled wool. If you're measuring yourself for a coat, then I recommend you put a couple of layers on, maybe a long sleeve t-shirt and a sweater, and then you measure your upper bust. And then rather than choose a size, because they're a little bit inaccurate, inconsistent between pattern houses, then you need to measure your size with your clothes on and then use the finished garment measurements, and that way you'll get a better fit on your coat. So for example, the Nova coat is really, really oversized. So if you picked your size and then sized up, just to be sure, your coat would be absolutely huge. So look at the finished garment measurements, and then you're in control of these. If you want a coat that's roomier, then you can go up a size based on the finished garment measurements. If you want a coat that's nice and fitted, or it's a belted one, then you can make sure you're getting the size that fits you. So rather than choose the size you normally wear in the shops or that you normally cut, then choose your size compared to the finished garment measurements. When you're all cut out, you're ready to sew. So I'm following the instructions. Style Arc have a bit of a reputation for meagre instructions, but you have the lane cut out here, you have the instructions here, and there's a construction guide here. And I must admit, I have used this today. I had a look at this to see how the collar pieces went on. So it starts with putting the front pieces together. The first part is to attach the top to the bottom. This is the collar edge here, and you'll be looking for a space where your pocket goes. Sew along that seam and then choose your finish. You need to do that twice. I've chosen to do a double top stitch on either side of the stitching line. It looks really neat, and it's holding down all of the seam allowances on the reverse. Next, we're going to take a look at the pocket. Next up, we're going to put the pocket pieces on, and here is where you will start to see me change my construction techniques, because I'm using boiled wool. If I folded the edges of my pocket down, then I would have quite a thick lump, and then if I put that onto my coat, my pocket would really bounce off the jacket. So I've chosen a different technique. There's a little notch here and one on the other side, and that's the fold line so that we can turn the top of the pocket down. Pin it in place. You may need to go and give it a little press with a press cloth over on the ironing board so that it's not too bouncy. I'm going to sew this 4 centimetres from the top edge, and I'm going to sew it from the right side so the pins are marking my stitch line, but you could tack this if you want a good guide. That's all pressed, and because I am using double edge stitching on all my seam lines, then I'm going to do the same on my pocket. So 2.5 centimetres from the edge, I'm going to put my pocket. That's moving it out a little bit to where the pattern is stating, and I'm going to put 2 rows of edge stitching. That makes the pocket sit really nice and flat. I haven't got a folded edge that's really bouncy. Once you have got the front pieces together, we're then going to look at the back. So you've got an upper back and a lower back, and there is a vent at the bottom. So we need to be sure that we're constructing all that correctly right from the start. These are the 2 back pieces with a vent. So you're going to put them right sides together, and there's a marking on the pattern to sew to. The marking is just below the vent. You can see there where I've stitched to, and then you use the same treatment as you've been using throughout your jacket. I've used the double top stitching, and I've secured it there at the top of the vent. It's time to put the back bottom onto the back top. So right sides together. This is the neck edge here. These are the armholes. Going to match them up, pin them in place. You'll be getting some bulky areas now, just around that centre point where the 2 intersections meet. So you might want to use clips or just pass over those with the pins. That is looking super neat, really pleased with that. Got a little bit of stretch just across the hips there still, and I have pressed open all of the vent. We can start putting the jacket together now. So with the shoulder seams right sides together and those neck edge pieces in the centre, we're going to pin the shoulders. So at 1 centimetre, that's the seam allowance for this pattern. And continue all of your pressing and preferred finishing style. This is how I've been pressing. I've been using a press cloth, some steam through my iron, and then just holding that heat from the cloth into the fabric with a clapper. And it's still a little bit bouncy, so then I'm doing the same from the right side. Try and press and not drag the iron. You can see there the improvement that press has made. I'm going to put the shoulder seams together. You'll see my technique for boiled wool, but you will need some kind of way to stabilise the shoulders, especially if you're using quite a heavy stretch knit. On the shoulder seam, I'm putting a piece of bias tape to hold that seam allowance out flat, and it will also stop the shoulder seam stretching out when I put the sleeve hanging from the edge. I'm whip stitching the edges down. I'm not attaching it to the seam allowance, I'm actually attaching it to the jacket. So that's kept everything flat. It's also stopped it stretching. I'm keeping with the double rows of edge stitching throughout. So I used it on the pocket and the front waist seams there, and I've continued that on the shoulders. It went through all of the layers and through the bias binding as well, and it's made it really strong. We're going to put the rest of the jacket together. The sleeves are easy to put in. They're the same on both sides. There isn't a front or a back, so you're looking for that sleeve head notch. That marks the shoulder, and then you pin out to the sides. Jacket's getting a little bit large to have on the table now, so here is the jacket on the mannequin, and we're going to sew the underarm and down to the lower hem. Might get bulky there on some of the chunkier parts. That side seam is now all pressed out, and I've just clipped it at the underarm because I won't be able to top stitch all the way down to the cuff. I can only do that double edge stitching on the side seam. I want it to continue round the body of the jacket. Next up, we've got the cuffs. So while we've got the sleeves inside out, I've just pinned up the cuffs. You can either do a 4 centimetre top stitching hem here, which will match the top of your pocket, or you can simply hand stitch this in place. It's time to put on the collar, and this is the part of the video I'm going to give the most time to, because I think it's the part that people maybe would be most frightened of if they pick this pattern. Now, I've got a collar, and my 2 collar pieces ordinarily would be sewn and then turned so that the seams are on the inside. You layer all the seam out and you get sort of nice pointy corners. Now, I can't do that with this boiled wool. It's too bouncy, it's too bulky. I end up with lots here. I can't get the corners pointed out. So I've mimicked the technique that I've used on the pocket on the collar. So I've just trimmed my collar down and added 2 layers of top stitching. So my collar now will have this finished edge. The edge will be double top stitched because the board wool doesn't fray. I'm getting really lovely points there. I wouldn't get that if I sewed these right sides together and turned them out. If you've got other fabric, then you'll be following the instructions as they are, interfacing one piece, the under collar, and then putting them together, trimming the corners and turning it out. So to start this adaptation, I decided that I wouldn't be turning my collars out. So I've looked on the pattern where it joins here. So I know that this bit is joining the jacket. So this bit here won't be joining the jacket. So that will be the bit I'm going to take out, because I don't need a seam allowance because I'm not putting two pieces together and sewing them. So I'm trimming off the seam allowance. That's 1 centimetre. And I'm going to do the same along the top edge of the collar. It's the unnotched edge that I'm dealing with. And then I'm going to make sure that the other collar piece is the same size. So I haven't changed the part of the collar that's joining onto the jacket. I'm just removing the seam allowance because I'm not making a seam. Now I'm going to sew this edge instead of turning it out. It's too thick. So I'm just going to top stitch it. Here it is finished, and that finish matches my pocket. I've got a really nice pointy corner, and it stands up well on its own. You might be adding interfacing to the inside if you're using a different fabric and sewing two together. Next, I'm going to put the collar onto the jacket, so I'll be looking for those notches. There's one at the back, there's some shoulder notches, and the two places to finish at the front. I've marked them with pins so you can see them. There should be a little bit of jacket stretching out past the collar. That makes the second part of the collar finish at the front. Once it's all pinned in, you can then sew the collar using the stitch guide from before. You're going to get some pretty bulky bits there on the shoulders, so you might need to layer some of that out. I've decided to layer out that front one because it just takes that bit of binding off at the same time. And then I can sew using the stitch line from when I attach the collar. To complete the collar construction, then we're going to put the facings together as one long facing unit, and we're going to put that onto the jacket. There's a back facing. You could switch this out for a piece of poplin or a finer fabric if you wanted to, and you need to mark the notches on the front facing. With right sides together, put the back facing to the front facings along the shoulder seams. You've got one complete facing unit. You're going to need to press those seams so they're nice and flat for attaching, and you're going to have the jacket facing you with the shoulders facing up. Then you're going to put it right sides together with the inside of the collar. So the right side of the facing is touching the inside of the collar. You've got a lot of bulk there. If you need to layer out some more, you can, but you definitely need clips at this point to hold it all together. Just take a little bit more care at this end. You've got a notch that matches up with the end of the collar. Match those other collar tips, and just there where you've got a little kink, I've put a pin in so that I can mark where to pivot when I sew. I'm going to sew this. It's getting quite heavy now, so I'm going to sew the collar first. I can check the collar now. I've just done that part. I've got a little nick there, but at the other end I've got a slightly bigger issue. I haven't got that little apex there correct. Some of the fabric has folded behind, so I'm just going to unpick that tiny corner and just lie it all flat again with pins. The clips didn't quite hold that position. There you go, that's much better. And I'm glad I did it in sections because I could get at that corner there easily. I can clip out some more of that seam allowance. And then I can move on to sewing up and pinning the front facings, which I'm doing as a sort of separate line of stitching. When I get to the bottom, the facing will be shorter than the jacket. I'm going to sew horizontally across that facing so that I can turn it out. And that lower part that's left over will fold up and become the hem. I'm going to trim off the corner on the collar revere at the top. I can push that out. Use a point turner there. That makes quite a neat finish there for the neckline. And at the bottom, I can also clip off the corner and take a bit of fabric bulk off the hem and turn that out as well. Just using my turning stick to point out that corner and pin up the hem to match the back vent. I'm going to hand stitch now down the side, along the hem and up the vent. The last part is to hem, and obviously we've got to take account of the vent at the back and how your fabric is handling and what adaptations you've been making throughout the pattern for your own fabric choice. So you might have been using an overlocker, you might be hand sewing, you might be top stitching. So you're going to keep that theme going throughout your jacket. I'm going to do a little bit on the facing there. It doesn't say to in the pattern, but I really want that bottom to hang freely and well without a loose facing on the inside. So I'm going to hand stitch down to the hem. On that edge, I've closed up where the facing meets that hemline. I've done little crosses, and that's holding it firmly. And then I can continue to hand stitch, taking a little of the fibres across the lower hemline. You can't see it from the right side. Don't pull it too tight or you'll get little nicks showing on the right side of the boiled wool. On the front, I've top stitched the facing and around the collar. I really couldn't top stitch through all of those shoulder seams and facings. So I've left the back untop stitched and then joined back on at the shoulder seam to return down the other facing. Okay, so this is the collar feature and this is how it should sit when you finish. So you've got these two pieces here, the collar that falls flat. It stands up at the back, so it keeps you warm there at the back, and then it's supposed to come down flat to make this nice shape here. And you pick your feature. So I picked that double row of top stitching, which I couldn't do on here. It was too thick, but I did it on the shoulder, I did it on the collar, I did it around the pockets, I did it on that centre join, and then I just had to do a single row for these thicker parts. So those are the sort of challenges and choices that you make when you make something out of boiled wool. It doesn't detract from using a pattern at all. You just have to pick your techniques and go with it depending on your fabric choice. So if you've chosen boiled wool, make life easy for yourself and choose techniques that will really help you along. If you like the look of sewing with boiled wool and this coat isn't your kind of thing, there are other things that you can make with it. So you could try a cape. So you'll get that same sort of minimal style lines. Anything with boiled wool, you want to be having minimal details. So this makes a really cosy winter cape. You can pair boiled wool with other fabrics so that you can reduce bulk. So in this gilet, The gilet is the outer layer, but you can use fleece on the inside, or you could line it with a shearling, or you could put different fabrics together to get different textures. Here's the Nova coat that I spoke about before. So the Nova coat is quite an oversized coat with really big pockets, no buttons or fastenings. But again, you want to be checking your finished garment measurements on that one. This example here is great. It's used 2 colours from our boiled wool range to make a really, really stylish Nova jacket. If you're lining your boiled wool, then it's a really great fabric for kids because it's really hard wearing, it's really warm, it doesn't let the wind through or anything. So this is one of our tufted ones. They're not always in stock, but you can check out some of our other boiled wool products. If you want your coat to have more swing and drape, so say you've got a full coat that's belted, maybe with a sort of skirt version on the bottom, then you might want to check out some boiled wool with slight tensile content. That will give it a little bit more drape. Boiled wool can also be used in other sewing projects. So here it's been used as a cap, because again it's lined on the inside so it won't be itchy, and also here it is as a dog coat because this fabric is really, really warm. In today's video I am wearing the Sudley blouse from Megan Nielsen Patterns. It's got a tie neck at the back, a collar. You don't have to have the collar if you don't want to, and I've also got a rick-rack edge on my collar. And it's made in a navy viscose, and it's one of the tops that I didn't think I'd wear so much because it was plain, but because it's plain navy, it goes with everything that's patterned on the bottom. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed that. If it's a project that you've not moved towards yet, coat making or jackets, it's a good one to start with. The collar's not too complicated, and also the fact that it's not lined makes it really easy to construct. You don't have to use such a challenging fabric as boiled wool. It's a nice one because it doesn't fray, but it is more tricky if you think your machine won't handle that so well. But you could try a Ponte Roma, a boucle, a thick sweater knit, anything like that. That will also make a great parka coat. If you've made anything, we would love to see it. So do make a free account over at Minerva. You can share your makes, upload photos, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to. It really does inspire our Minerva maker community. You can also join the Craft Club, where you will receive discounts and offers throughout the year. You can also come back to here, the Minerva YouTube channel, where you can check out all our playlists for sew-alongs, educational videos, fabric handling videos, new fashion, new patterns, new fabrics. They're all here for you to enjoy. Like and subscribe, and do call again soon.